Hello, good to be back here. Now we have a very special session in which Google and Euroconsumers will discuss their joint work regarding the implementation of the new Brazilian data protection law with small and medium-sized companies. I will be the moderator of the session, and we have three special guests. Marcelo Lacerda, who is Director of Government and Public Policy at Google Brazil, Henrique Lian, Head of Public Affairs at Proteste, and Alex Mansour, who is Director of Inclusive and Urban Production at the Ministry of Citizenship. Are we going to start with you, Henrique?
Sure, Matthew.
Okay. Excuse me just a second. As a micro-entrepreneur myself, I'm very interested in the contents of this panel. I'm going to propose a first round of comments from our very special speakers, and I'm going to start with Henrique. And I'm going to ask Henrique, can you share with us what your joint work at Proteste and Google, what are you guys proposing for small and individual companies like the one I own?
Thank you, Matthew. Good afternoon, Marcelo. Good afternoon, Alex. Good afternoon, everybody. Now it's afternoon in both Europe and Brazil, so we don't have that decalage anymore. Matthew, we live in a data economy, as everybody knows. In the data economy, data is the new currency. So we need data to circulate in order to generate wealth to nations, to corporations, and to citizens. Of course, sensitive data must not circulate. Other data must circulate. And we see as Euroconsumers that consumers are or should be at the center of this new economy. And I explain why. Today, you don't develop any service, any product, any process without collecting and treating data from individuals. Those individuals sometimes are called clients, especially when they are buying. Sometimes they are called consumers when you have a problem. It's kind of a joke, but you have the consumer's code and you have clients' policies and things like that. So this individual, the consumer, the client, is absolutely necessary in the new economy. Without the individual's data, there would be no wealth generation. But on the other hand, we as Euroconsumers also recognize that companies are the catalysts of innovation and of deployment to client consumers. So that's why, as we have seen in our institutional video several times during the event, we Euroconsumers and in Brazil Proteste, we believe that consumers and companies should work together in the digital economy. As simple as that. And taking from this, Google has been our biggest partner. In Europe, we have been working together for several years. In 2019 and 2020, we made a joint survey in 7 countries: Belgium, Portugal, Spain, Italy, UK, France, and Germany, trying to understand digital behavior from consumers. How long they stay connected. What are their anxieties? How they protect their children? How they protect their sensitive data? And we are releasing some of the findings of that joint survey in this event in another session. And of course, we are working together to give an answer to problems pointed out by consumers. In Brazil, our collaboration with Google Brazil also started through data protection. So first, we had some common positions during the discussion of the law in the National Congress, and we advocated together those positions. After the law was approved, we worked last year in the information to common citizens what are data, first of all. What data is sensitive, how to protect data, what companies can help, and what are the threats to individuals' data. So we did a joint social media campaign together. This social media campaign was also discussed in our program at CBN, the Radio CBN in Brazil. We did a series informing consumers, and we did a high-level event together, very disruptive, not like this one, but almost. In the old times when we could have presidential events with high-level politicians, regulators, companies, Google, of course, and civil society, discussing how to implement that law in Brazil. This was last year. But then, also together, we came to the understanding that also small and micro companies like yourself need to be helped in the implementation of the law. We are not concerned that a small company is going to be fined by the National Data Authority, or that the National Authority will close the company. We're not talking about this. What we understand is that any small company works with medium and bigger companies. So if those small entrepreneurs don't demonstrate that they are in compliance with data regulation, they will be simply put out of the market. Imagine somebody who is a photographer. Imagine that it is still possible to have end of the year happenings in companies. And this photographer is going to be hired to take pictures in the amigo secreto of a big company in Brazil, where we exchange presents. So this guy, this individual who is a company, needs to prove to the contractor that he is in compliance with data protection. Because if he goes to the party of a big company, take pictures, and that pictures are hacked, they are posted without authorization, the big company who hired him will also respond in the law of data protection. So we are very concerned with the small entrepreneur who has no previous knowledge, no systems to be in compliance with the law. That's why we are doing this joint work in 2020.
Thank you, Henrique. That is fascinating, and I must admit, a little bit scary from my point of view as a small business person. Marcelo, could you elaborate on what Henrique said from the point of view of Google?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mathan. Hi, Henrique, and hi, Alex. Let me just start by saying thank you to Protection and the entire Euro Consumer Group for having me here today, representing Google also. As we all know, the pandemic is indeed a great challenge for small business worldwide. So I think, like, on top of what Henrique just said, we at Google have a long-lasting commitment to support the small business environment, and also perceive these actors as vectors of the economic recovery for governments overall, but specifically here in Brazil also. And as Henrique said, we understand that most Brazilian small business are not prepared to be in compliance with the Brazilian data privacy law. And as part of our overall committee that I just mentioned, we felt that we should do something to help those businesses. As I don't know if Matthew, how aware are you about the law, but it is extremely complex. and complying with it, it can be a challenge for the entire business sector, but especially for small business. So I think the main purpose here is to help entrepreneurs understand what changed with the entry into force of the law, and so they can meet the requirements of the law. The first thing that we did was to map all the important items that demand actions and policy for small companies. And once we did that, we also we try to understand the nature of the data those companies store, and also how they treat that, and how to keep them safe, and how to have transparency policies, like when and how to delete data, for example. And based on this assessment, we developed our project based on three pillars. The first one is we developed like an instructions manual, a booklet with 8 steps to be implemented by the company. And for each one of those steps, we have practical examples taken from daily business experience. For the second pillar, we created a brief test so that companies can easily verify their adequacy level to the law and what gaps they would need to fill. The third and last pillar, it was the game, and I must say that was like, I would say that Enrique's idea. He's a very smart, brilliant, and have a lot of innovative ideas. So we developed this game to make the project more attractive, since gamification is something that gets people attention in a friendly way, so they can learn more about the law itself and how to comply with it. And all this content, of course, is it's available for free on a website hosted by Professor. And additionally, we are doing a social media campaign targeting those companies during this year. Uh, just to conclude my first lines here, I would like to highlight also that at Google, we see this privacy law as an outcome of extensive discussions involving the private sector, the civil society, the academia, and public authorities. Yes. It's our understanding is that despite being challenged in terms of complexity, it also protects the rights of the Brazilian citizen, and this is, I think, it's our main goal for everybody who are involved on this discussion and in the implementation of the law. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcelo. Alex, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon, Matthew. Good afternoon, Henrique, Marcelo. Nice to meet you, Marcelo and Matthew. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Thank you, my friend.
Oh, Alex,
Likewise.
go ahead, Henrique. I'm sorry. Alex, does this kind of joint initiative make sense for the government? Can you give us some insight into how you see the law and how it works?
Matthew, as you know, the Ministry of Citizen, it's in charge of the Unified Registration List. You call here in Brazil the Cadastro Único, or the short name is CAD Único. It's a specific number of people because it's a list of citizens who need the most to be supported by Brazilian state. Now you're talking about families that survive with less than $100 per month per capita family. The CAD Único today has more than 57 million families, represent more than 76 million citizens in vulnerable situations. This amount of people in Cadiuni, it's a big advance that the state has been achieved each year. Because years ago, we practically don't even know where or who they live or where they live. And our department here in this ministry is called Inclusive Urban Protection. It has a mission to capacitate and support these people in two lines, as for a labor or for the entrepreneurship. Part of them need to be trained for traditional skills to attend the market. But our challenge here, it's not only we have to look ahead, considering that we are living today in a revolution, the effects of the revolution, the Industrial Revolution 4.0, arriving quickly in our lives. Part of them are average workers. They will need to be retrained as a condition for having place in the new economy. Part of them are or will be micro entrepreneurs. And let's be frank. Last week in I was talking with Henrique, and he said a special thing about this. These entrepreneurs that we are talking here in the Cadiuni, they are in the Cadiuni because they not their choice, because, not by their choice or talent, but the necessity. They were excluded from the formal labor market or were never able to part of the market. Most of them were invisible workers, invisible people. They were never registered. So, as I said, they were about 76 million people in this Cadiuni. In the case of entrepreneurship, they will need training, and probably in the way we have to offer microcredit for them. And the microcredit can also be an alternative to the emergency aid. And these things, we here in this moment, we are planning a program, and we are to prepare to run in 2021. But a crucial thing to be considered is the training, and the correct training for the skills according to the region in Brazil, because each region has a different map of labor in Brazil. Here we are talking about a progressive plan, which aims to coordinate policies to productive inclusion, and which has as principle to offer training and professional qualification to these vulnerable people, obviously in partnership with the private sector, generating social synergy by reducing the inequalities. In my opinion, this moment here in this panel, this sort of initiative taken by protests and the participation of Google sound like music for us, because the idea is to spread the news among the micro entrepreneurs. Since we know that one of the most critical difficulties is to reach people who need the support. And I know the Google is having, it's talking with the ministry citizen and the high level with the ministry and the executive secretary. But this program, I think it's a good program, a program for us to try a pilot in our program. And they need support, because as Henrique told, can you imagine these people without receiving any kind of support? What sort of wrong things and bad faith could reach them in their lives. So the data protection law we have to implement in all of the programs in the government. But this special kind of people, we need to support more them because they they are nowadays they are alone of this kind of support, and the state must take care and prepare them for this moment. It's a challenge. So considering the small business, it's not only a solution but also a necessity to any country. Help the entrepreneurs to be a compliance with data protection law. As I said, it's a urgent step now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. I'm going to ask Enrique a question now. Enrique, Euro consumers and protest are both in the consumer protection business. And I'm not going to ask you why Euro consumers came to Brazil because you've already answered that so many times. But what I am going to ask you is if consumers in Europe and consumers in Brazil have different behaviors and require different types of protections.
Yeah, this is a good reflection, Matthew. In fact, we are dealing with two kinds of consumers, different kinds of consumers. Most of the time submitted to different legislations. Other times they are submitted to the same legislation, kind of legislation, which is also a problem. And I will give you one example before coming to data protection. For instance, taxation on vehicles in Europe is the same as in Brazil. The larger the car, the more emitter the car, the most expensive you pay your taxes, your IPVA in Brazil. But Brazilians tend to imitate North Americans in terms of consumption behavior, not Europeans. So in the United States, big cars like SUVs, they pay small taxes because they are classified as working vehicles. So Brazilians imitate Americans buying SUVs, paying European taxes. So this is the worst of both worlds. I am a little bit afraid it can happen the same with data protection. In Europe, Europeans are very care of their data. They don't want to share. They don't trust companies most of the time. In the United States, you don't need a data protection law because the consumption culture is so strong and people tend to be more open to share their data for benefits. And America shares the data, but he wants something back. He wants a discount, a bonus, or something. In Brazil, we have a new data protection law, which is much alike the European. Very closed, very protective. For a citizen that is going to imitate Americans, but not for the benefits, sometimes for nothing. So our main concern during the debate of the law was to protect citizens that don't know what data are, but on the other hand, giving incentives to companies to provide voluntarily benefits to consumers. For instance, if you are going to a drugstore, buy an expensive medicine, they will offer you a big discount, 30%, 40%, if you give some data to the laboratory. What they want to know, where you live, to know if you're high class, middle class, low class. They want to know what are other diseases, something they will not be allowed to ask anymore because this is a sensitive information. And they want to know the medical license of the physician who prescribed it. This is a very important information to laboratories because they will assess if their marketing strategies are okay or not. So in that case, laboratories are buying data from consumers in the form of big discounts, but consumers don't know it, don't perceive it. So we tried to influence the legislation to give incentives to all private sector to give more benefits to consumers every time that consumers share some important data. Of course, we're not talking about Google, who is in the opposite spectrum of giving benefits to consumers and also informing consumers. We are dealing with your data, we need your authorization, etc., much before the data protection law was enforced. But we are talking about the market in general. So that's why we are working together, also thanking the good words from Marcelo, he's a gentleman. It's very important that a consumers organization who knows how to talk to consumers, especially those with less information, and a global company who deals with data all over the world to work together. Only this way we are going to be successful.
Very interesting, fascinating. I always wondered why they keep asking me the same questions at every drugstore I go to.
Now you know.
In Brazil, yeah. They know everything about me, everything. But so far, okay, so good. Marcelo, what changed for Google with the data protection law? Can you tell me a little bit about that? Does this exist in other places? Was this a big hurdle for Google in Brazil?
Yes, Matthew, thank you. I think that in line with our work on developing products that users can trust, as Henrique just mentioned, we have also actively participated in a number of privacy debates that have led to the drafting of some of the modern data protection regulation around the world. So it was like this with the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. In Europe, it was like that in the discussion of the California Consumer Privacy Act, the CCPA. Yes. So and this was also the case with the General Data Protection Law in Brazil, the LGPD. So, as an outcome of this extensive discussion that also Henrique mentioned before, with at the beginning within the executive branch, and then during the discussion in the Brazilian Congress, that involved the private sector, the civil society, academia, government officials. The law turns out to protect Brazilian rights at the same time that it doesn't hinder the business, the development of business, and the innovation. Yeah. So for us, the rules described by the LGBT apply to all companies and entities that deal with personal data, and that's why that's one of the main reasons of our joint force with Proteste here in Brazil. From small business to school, from the private sector, and as Alex mentioned, the public sector also. Whether it is online or offline, they are doing this. So, in terms of Google, with the entry into force of the LGBT, what we did was we updated our privacy policy and also updated our data processing terms that rules our relationship with users, customers, and partners, where of course is applicable. In addition to that, we are also supporting our advertisers as well, Google Cloud customers, in order to help them to comply with the law. And we have a specific landing page that provides all the details about how we create privacy controls that works for everyone, with the main principle of putting the users in the control of his or her data, because this is something that is key for Google.
Very good. Thank you very much. Alex, can I ask you one quick last question? We're running out of time here. You have worked with the social service of Brazilian industries and in the area of sustainability. And do you think these kinds of organizations for small businesses or businesses like SESI and Sebrae, do they have a role to play in data protection?
Yeah. In my opinion, it is. It's fundamental, their participation. But we have to involve a lot of institutions like the SESI, but the other institutions around in Brazil, because it's a big challenge for us. It's a very specific, and this is very, in my opinion, we have a big challenge to put this LPGD for the vulnerable people, because everybody, we have to learn about it, and we have to support this more vulnerable people is difficult. So the participation of SESI, the participation of SENAI, that is the other institution with focus in capacitation. This is important, the participation to create moments and create this kind of discussion about the LPGD in their programs. But it's mainly, in my opinion, that we put these kind of issues in our programs. All these kind of programs in our ministry, it's necessary to treat this theme. It's very important for us, in my opinion.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank all of you. I learned an awful lot in this session. It's a whole new world for me. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Matthew. Take care. Thank you, Matthew.
I will.
We are on your side.
Good. I'll be consulting you. I'll be calling you up to ask you guys questions.
Thank you.
Hey, Matthew.
Yes.
Hey, Matthew, take some time and visit the protest website and do the game. You know.
I'll play the game. Okay. Okay. And if I win, I'll let you know.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you, Henrique.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Marcelo, for all the partnership.
Thank you, Marcelo.
Thank you. Bye-bye.